tell us about childhood. What was that like? Did you have siblings? Was your family together as a kid?
No. Well, they were together for a time. So my mother married my dad. She was 17 when she got married. She eloped with him to Acapulco. Ooh. She was in Colombia at the time. She said visiting her aunt. More to come in that story. And anyway, she ran off with my dad, who was 33 at the time. I want you to put that together.
How old was she?
17.
Wow.
Yeah. Hello. Anyway, and so I was born when she was about 19 years old, and we were living in Lagos, Nigeria. So I was born in Lagos, Nigeria in Africa. And then, my dad being in an oil and gas job, he was a seismologist. We traveled all over the world. We were in South America for a time and ended up in Turkey, in Ankara, Turkey. And that's where my parents separated when I was 4 years old. And my mother took us on a whirlwind tour of the world. She was a model and an actress. And, some bit parts in movies, French films, Italian films, that kind of stuff. And let's see, went to a lot of different schools, pretty much a new school every 2 to 3 months. So I was always the new kid. So I learned to try to fit in as best I could. So I developed some techniques and some skills. Let's just put it that way. Became quite a consummate chameleon. Learn to fit in quickly, not get your butt beat too hard, or, not be singled out as the weird guy. Mm-hmm. So, always try to find a little crew that I could run with and be a part of. And then I was gone, so I could make up anything, I could tell them that, I was, whatever, and that my parents were whatever. And I knew I wasn't going to see them in 3 months. I wasn't going to have to grow up with them or try to explain that later. So that kind of led me into a sort of an illusionary world that I lived in. My mother was a very controlling person. She was a loving person, but she had a lot of quirks and faults and, all that good stuff. She was very demanding and a perfectionist, and it was very difficult growing up in a home like that. And so I guess what I would say is that I learned to lie very early in my life. I had to disguise everything that was going on inside those rooms, inside that house, or inside the four walls of where I lived with crazy parents. My dad being an alcoholic. When we lived in Singapore, I was 8 years old when I got there. And in 1970, on September the 11th, weird day, my dad committed suicide. And so it was just before my 9th birthday.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And that was pretty tough. There's something telling in that. And I actually shared this in my story not too long ago. When my mother came in and told us all of that, and it was a terrible day, and my sister and I were there, and I have a sister, Pamela. And Pamela and I were sitting there, and she told us this terrible news, and we cried, and we're crying and crying. And my mother mentions, hey, would you like a Coca-Cola? Now, in my house, a Coca-Cola was gold. I mean, to get a Coca-Cola, you had to be on the really good list, right? You had to have done some good stuff to get a Coca-Cola. And there I was being offered a Coca-Cola. And in that instant, my whole emotional demeanor changed. Like suddenly I knew there was going to be some relief to whatever it was that I was experiencing. And it was going to come in the form of a Coca-Cola. But that was really kind of a very big tell for me, for how I was going to continue to live my life, was that there was going to always be some outside thing. There was always going to be something other than me that was going to fix me, and it was going to somehow heal whatever it was broken inside me. There was never an introspection in that. There was always this expectation of something other than me that was going to come and fix me.
That's interesting. So with the Coca-Cola, it's an external thing that helped make you feel better about yourself, about the situation, what was going on, filling the void. What was that like? Did it temporarily relieve what was going on and ease that pain? And were you chasing other things outside of that following your father's death.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of behavior after that. I mean, the Coca-Cola was just indicative of that moment. It was just how something could actually shift me emotionally and it not have any real significance. I mean, it was just a Coca-Cola. But the truth was about that was that there was this expectation that was set up inside of me that somehow there was going to be relief. And so I sought that out. If there was a girl that I liked at school, I sort of put it all on that, that having that girl somehow was going to make me feel better about who I am, and really all of those things were just indicative of the fact that I just had such low self-worth. I had grown up in a home where I didn't feel valued or wanted or loved and appreciated. But felt more like an appendage, like I was baggage. My mother would travel with about 10 suitcases because she had a big wardrobe, and we would have one each, my sister and I, give you some indication there. And wherever we left, we had to leave all the toys and all that stuff. That was all dispensable. Right. So I never got any of my childhood stuff to sort of stick around. It was always new when I could get it. And, there was a lot of behaviors in there, that you would expect of a pre-adolescent, boy who's, very unhappy and trying to find comfort, So I found ways to comfort myself,
get out of yourself.
Yeah, get out of myself. The sports was one way to do it. Other people, putting myself in situations that were, stressful or that had me having to respond and be
chaotic situations.
Chaotic situations. And I created all of that stuff,
Yeah. This show is sponsored by Open Recovery Addiction Help. Whether you're newly sober, in long-term sobriety, or even maybe looking to make a change in your life, Open Recovery offers 24/7 support right from your phone. It's anonymous and packed with tools to help you stay connected, stay accountable, and build the life you deserve. Download the Open Recovery Addiction Help app today and take the next step in your recovery journey.
And so, just a very interesting, troubled childhood. There was a lot of physical abuse with my mother. She wasn't a very pleasant person at times. She used to play this game with us. I called it a game because the thought of her doing this intentionally was just too terrifying. But she would ask, where are the scissors? And you would say, well, I don't know. And then she would say, well, you got to find them, and you've got an hour. Otherwise, you get belted. And so there was this hour of panic, this incredible, wow, what do we do? And you could search everywhere except her room.
Yeah.
Where the scissors probably were. And the hour would end. And of course, the logical thing was, oh, you're going to get a beating. So I'd get my beating and all of that. And then the scissors would miraculously appear at some point in time, later on in the day.
That's traumatizing.
Yeah, it was very traumatizing. It was incredibly traumatizing. So much so that it has a kind of a PTSD effect in my present life. If I can't find something, I get panicked.
You go back to that.
It's almost a visceral thing. It's so ingrained in my DNA that you got an hour, and it's like, whoa, it's on. And so that can materialize in silly things, like someone says, hey, did this, this, that, or the other. And, I don't have an answer. I don't have a solution. I've got to find it. The clock's ticking. So that still presents itself, even today, even after all the work I've done.
Yeah. So do work timelines trigger you?
Work timelines can trigger me, and then I would set unrealistic expectations of work timelines, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, we need to do this in 3. I can do it in 1, right? Right. Like, let's compress the diamond a little more. Let's make this even harder than it has to be.
That's interesting.
Right? Yeah, it was always sort of like that in my work life and even in my home life, and so we'll talk about that as well.
Were you moving around through high school as well and continuing with the chameleon behavior?
Oh, throughout. I mean,
so it was all through grade school, high school.
Yeah. So in 71, at the end of 71, we moved to England, to London, from Singapore. And that was my first introduction really to kind of a Western world. I'd been living overseas all my life. I'd not really lived in a sort of a Western world. Like I'd never lived in the US. Here I was, an American citizen, never having lived in America. And people would ask me, what's America like? I'm search me. I don't know. I mean, it's everything I see on TV, right? I mean, I watch reruns, that kind of stuff.
Well, the chameleon I'm surprised you weren't like, it was great. It's awesome.
I did.
love it.
I mean, I would. It would be translated from what I saw, on the movies and stuff. I was giving them back whatever they saw.
Yeah.
But I certainly didn't know what that experience was like. But I was an authority, I'm sure. When I was 12 years old, I got shipped off to boarding school. And that was a pretty traumatic experience. When you're 12, you're still sort of in those formative years. And I got shoved into this, boarding school. It was formerly an all boys school, and they got co-ed. And I spent, 3.5 years at that school. And let me tell you, every bad habit that I ever really, developed came out of boarding school. I learned to smoke there, was drinking there, doing drugs, all that stuff. It was all at boarding school. I mean, these were as many troubled kids as I was. It was they were all just as misfit, in the toy box as I was, and they all exhibited the same problems. It was probably just a school full of future alcoholics, really, and drug addicts. I went on to another boarding school. Only lasted 3/4 of the year there. I got expelled after a suspension. So I got suspended for bringing some beer onto campus, which was a silly move on my part, but I was trying to be popular. And next thing I know, I'm suspended. There's a whole story to that, about the guys that we were riding with and the fact that they flipped the car over. And that's why, after they flipped the car over, they came to the school the next day to say who else was with them. It was a big
That's how
thing.
you got caught.
Yeah, it was a big thing.
Oh, wow.
And it was a lot of stories going around. And I remember getting picked up by the car service, brought back to London. My mother was very upset that I had gotten suspended. She goes, the next thing, you're probably going to get expelled from this school. Your behavior is terrible. After that 1 week suspension, I go back, and within a week, they busted me for having a marijuana pipe. They found a marijuana pipe. They didn't find the actual marijuana, but they found the pipe, and that was enough.
Yeah, of course.
And I got expelled just because it was like on the throes of my suspension. It was like boom, boom. And now I'm back at home in London with a raging mother who's like, you got expelled, didn't you? And I got to say, there was something of a desire in my part to accomplish that. I wanted to get out of boarding school. I even though it was tough living at home, I knew that was got to be better than just being stuck with a bunch of kids 24/7. If you had a gripe with someone in boarding school, that didn't just go away at the end of the day. That carried on. It was the next day. It was just, it's not the best environment, for kids. I would never send my kid to a boarding school. Never did.
Yeah.
Let's see. There was something I was going to touch on there.
Did you finish up boarding school elsewhere? Or did you go back to high school somewhere?
No, I went back to high school. Yeah. So then
Okay.
in 11th and 12th grade, I got accepted to American Community School in Knightsbridge in Pont Street, which is the other school, the other American school there. There's the American school in London. Then there's ACS, which was us. We were the intellectual ones. They were more the jocks,
Yep, of course.
And it was a great school. I really enjoyed it. I learned to do a lot of drinking and drugging there. My senior year, I'll give you an example. My my classes ran till 11 o'clock, and then I had a 2 o'clock art class.
3 hours to do whatever you wanted.
Yeah. And what I did was I went down to the pub with all the other, and we would get smashed, because 3 hours is plenty of time to get smashed. And we get smashed, and then we would go and do art, and I thought, I have arrived.
Yeah.
Like this is the life, like I get to do this creative stuff all drunk on my butt. And so anyway, it came around to college time and I thought, well, where do I want to go? I was big into physics and I loved Einstein. So I thought I'm going to go to Princeton. So I applied to Princeton. I got a possible maybe, right? And so I thought, okay, well, how do I architect this? And there was this little school called Rider College, or Rider University now, but Rider College in New Jersey was 7 miles away from Princeton. 7 miles. Now, to me, 7 miles was nothing. I could walk that. Mm-hmm. And so I told them over at Princeton, I said, well, I'm going to go to Rider. And they said, great. Here's what you got to do. You just put in a good semester, one solid semester. That's it. Get your GPA in a good place and then just transfer in. There'll be plenty of room for you. What did I do? I get to Rider. I discover it's just like the freaking Wild West. I'm untethered. I'm 3,000 miles away from home. And I discover New York City and CBGBs. And the nightlife, in 1979 in New York was crazy. And I got a 1.96 that semester.
Ooh.
Yeah. And it was like, bye-bye, Princeton. Mm-hmm. Like that. And once that was off the table, it was like Katie bar the door. I was just off to the races, and I pulled my GPA up to a 2.7, taking things like Greek mythology and Russian 1 and 2.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah. So you were going to Rider. You then, you get a 1.9. Princeton's out of the question. Now, what was the thought process for you? And I'm asking because as a fellow alcoholic, I'd have like these goals, standards for myself. And slowly I would just lower the bar for my drinking and my drugging. I would justify things. What was that like once Princeton was out of the picture? That was your goal. That was the mission. Mm-hmm. Once you kind of aborted that, mm-hmm. and what was it like from there? Was it another justification? It was just a constant party. Okay. So you then at this point, balls to the wall, let's go.
Yeah.
New York City.
Yeah. So there was this little, I had this girlfriend, Alicia DeLugo, sweet gal, right? She was crazy, but I loved her. And she says to me very early on in our relationship, while I was in my early college, she says, was your dad a veteran? And I said, well, yeah, he was a veteran. He was in the Navy. She goes, and he died? And I was like, yeah. She goes, you can get money from the government, right? And I was like, really? She goes, yeah. So she showed me how to fill out all the applications and the whole 9 yards. Now here I am in college. Everything's being paid for. I got room and board taken care of. I'm getting a small stipend, from my folks, a couple $100 a month, mm-hmm. for incidentals. This is 1979, 80. And I fill it all out. Nothing happens. I didn't hear anything. This is pre-email days. You didn't, weren't involved in the process until it just happened. And one day a check shows up for $1,700, like back pay on like the time I'd served already in college and what they were going to send me, like $800 a month or something. And I'm like, this is great.
I'm rich.
And all of that, every dime of that went to buying pot, booze, and other and sundry, stuff, acid, coke, whatever,
How long do you make it at Rider?
2 years.
Okay.
2 years. And in 1982, my stepdad said, done with this, you've had your fun. Your mother's got cancer. You need to go back to London. And so my mother had cervical cancer at the time. So I went back to London, enrolled in a school there that would accept my my accreditation or whatever, mm-hmm. which was difficult because they scoff at, American education in London is considered a joke, right? If you go to an American university, it's basically like getting through high school for them. And so, there's this attitude. And so I completed that, got an associate's degree in economics and government and politics. And then worked for a while. And the whole time, my partying and all of that was just out of control. I was a bartender, at a Tex-Mex restaurant, the only Tex-Mex restaurant in London, and I had to find it.
Yeah.
And, so I'm drunk by 10 o'clock in the evening and I got to work till 1, so it was an interesting time. And then, my dad, my stepdad, had gotten sober, was living in Houston at the time. My mother was living in London. And he comes in and he does this amends to me. I'm sorry for, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, whatever. And he says, if you want, you can come and hang with me in Houston, for August. And I was like, okay. So basically that's what I did. And really what I was trying to do was get away from all the chaos and the nightmare that was going on. I owed people money. There was things going on.
Geographical.
It was geographical.
You had to get out of,
right.
That was the problem, not me.
Yeah.
I need to move and start a new life.
Yeah. So I'm aborting out of there and I'm getting, so I leave and go to Houston and I arrive in Houston. And what I didn't put together was that everything I'd been doing was going to stop. Like just stop.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't put that together. The plane ride. Let's see. I got to the airport. It was a Wednesday. I got to the airport and I started drinking at the airport and I missed my plane. Okay. This Heathrow.
And you were at the airport, but you missed your flight.
I missed my flight.
Amazing.
Yeah. I was talking to some gal or doing something. I was drinking. And so I missed my plane. And so now I got to wait. And so now I'm just stuck in this airport, and I finally got a flight out and it's the Thursday I leave the next day and I get in Friday morning in Houston and I am smashed. I got on the plane and I remember vaguely I was talking to some girl in the back, smoking a cigarette. This is back when you could smoke in the plane.
That's amazing.
Drinking a beer, smoking a cigarette. And the next thing I know, we're landing in Houston. And I've been in a conversation with a nun who's been sitting next to me called Sister Ignatius. That's kind of significant because there's a Sister Ignatius in the sort of AA folklore.
Mm-hmm.
And Sister Ignatius, and I was talking to her about my dad and his drinking. The whole time she's watching me just consume copious amounts of alcohol.
Just get plastered.
Yeah. And she prayed for me. She wished me the best. And I got to the door of the airplane and I had my flight bag and a squash racket because that's a very popular sport in America, right? Mm-hmm. Squash. You ever heard of it?
Of course.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't get played in this country. It's racquetball. It's racquetball, right? But there I was with my squash racket. These are the things that I chose to travel with. And I hit the lip of that plane getting out and I face planted, falling out of it. So I kind of say, I fell out of an airplane and landed in Houston. But that was it. I had a white suit on. It was a white linen suit. I had spilt a Bloody Mary on me at some point, and it was just all this mess. And I had been pushing my sleeves up for the last 3 days. I'd lived in that suit for 3 days.
Yeah.
And so the sleeves were all discolored and black and, from pulling them up onto my arm,
Mm-hmm.
and, that's how I showed up to my dad. Right. And he looks at me and he just goes, wow, you're fit to be tied. And, I go to his place and he says, I'm going to go to a meeting tonight. You want to come? This was a Friday night. And I said, I'm good. I suffered that whole weekend. I mean, it was like Friday, Saturday, Sunday was terrible. I was detoxing and I didn't realize it, and I basically slept. I couldn't really sleep at night because I was tossing and turning so much. And then during the day I would, doze off. Long story short, Monday comes rolling around and I had a number of a guy. His name was Andrew. And he was a friend of a girlfriend of mine, or who's the brother of a girlfriend of mine. And I knew that I could find relief from him because we'd partied before. So I was going to call him. But there was this other number, Michael Ganther. And he was the guy that was at the Houston Regional Council on Alcoholism. Well, I called Andrew first and he didn't answer.
Of course you did.
And then I called Michael.
Yeah.
And he answered. And I went down there and I took this test. It was 20 simple questions. I got 19 of them right. I felt pretty good about that.
Oh, you didn't do 20 out of 20?
No.
I got a 20 out of 20.
I hadn't been in jail yet. I had never gone to jail. At that point, I had never gone to jail. I had been, detained, but I'd never gone to jail. I never hit the clink then. I was 20 years old,
I mean, well, I guess I'm 19 then because I didn't like go in, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So you're clearly qualified.
Clearly qualified.
Okay.
And I go to my first meeting the next day, which is a Tuesday night, and I saw Father Martin's chalk talk, right? And it really got to me. I mean, I really got what he was saying, you know, about this being a disease and about, you know, how it sort of takes over, you know, your mind and your life and everything else. And I was like, you know, this might just be what I need. Soon made lots of friends. There were some young people in AA at the time. I was kind of, you know, one of the younger ones. Most of them were old curmudgeons, crusty old guys, you know, that smoked cigars in the meetings and, you know, drank copious amounts of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I got a sponsor, did all that stuff, worked steps. And I was in my first year and I had a roommate who was a little wild. And he worked for a landscaping company and he got paid in part with Sensimilia, you know, some weed. Mm-hmm. And I remember coming home one day, a long day at work, you know, I was waiting tables at the time. And I remember thinking, you know, I remember walking in and I saw his Frisbee where he cleaned his pot and there was pot in the Frisbee and there was some papers there and all that. And this wild hair, I thought, you know, I wonder if I can still roll a joint. I mean, that's
with almost a year sober.
With almost a year sober.
Wow.
Right. I wonder if I can roll a joint. And I rolled a joint. It was like, well, I still got it. You know, I put the joint down and I went into my room and I go back out into the living room and I look over, I see the joint. I said, I wonder, you know, what this stuff tastes like, if it's any better. Ooh. I like that thing. I take a couple puffs. I go, oh, this is bad. I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't do this. All right. I put it down, go back into my room. I'm smoking a cigarette. That cigarette has that taste, you know, it tastes different. You know, it's like, oh, now I got that buzz on. I go out, I finish that whole joint, right? He comes back. He says, you know, hey, what's up? You've been smoking? And I was like, yeah. He's like, well, hey, let's get it on. So I get higher than a kite, right? We go out for breakfast at 3:00 in the morning, that kind of deal, you know? And the next day I call my spiritual advisor, not my sponsor, because I knew my sponsor was going to say, I call my spiritual advisor, Arlene, she's a beautiful gal. Mm. And I said, hey, you know, last night I smoked a little pot, you know, and what do you think? I didn't drink. And she's like, what do you think? I was like, damn it, you know? And so I go to the meeting, I pick up a white chip, right? And I'm sitting there in this meeting and everybody's like, oh, welcome back. You know, it's okay. Everything's going to be fine. And from the corner, this guy hollers, bullshit. And I went, what? It's Hacksaw Jim. And he goes, bullshit. He goes, you went out on a couple joints. He says, you go out there and you get you a couple keys of that stuff and you smoke it till you can't smoke no more. And then you come back and you pick up that chip. I was like, well, how dare you? And that's exactly what I did, you know? So I went on a run for about 3 days. In that 3 days, my roommate up and left, took the rent money with him, took my stereo and my Patagonia jacket.
Yeah.
And he was gone.
That guy knew you weren't done.
Well, it wasn't that he knew I wasn't done. He was already off to the races. He was not, you know, playing the program deal.
Oh, that guy wasn't sober?
No, he was playing it sober.
Hacksaw Jim?
No, Hacksaw Jim. Hacksaw Jim was the guy in the meeting. My roommate is the guy that
But why would he say that to you? Like that's
Hacksaw?
Yeah.
Because that's what you did back in the 80s. In the early 80s, it was tough love, man. It was really tough love. You know, they didn't mince words. You know, this is a life and death situation. You're playing with your life. They really said some things that, you know, hurt your feelings, but saved your life, you know, and, you know, it was a different time. It really was. You know, there weren't a lot of young people in the program. There was this sort of belief that all these young people that were coming to the program were just a little too green. You didn't have enough under your belt. It was that whole sort of genre of, you know, go out there and really get it on. You know, if you're going to get in here, you know, have it mean something really significant, you know.
If you could go back, what was lacking in your program when you were coming up on a year, like that joint started talking to you? Because I've relapsed, and the relapse happens way before you pick up, or even maybe a couple of weeks before, whatever it is, before you actually pick up that substance.
What it was that I set myself up. I mean, the minute that my roommate, decided to share with me that, he was getting paid in part with Sensimilia was the day I should have said, I can't be here anymore. There's this part of us, I think, as recovering alcoholics and alcoholics where we tempt fate. I got this, I got this, like, let's test this, And so there was that part of it was like, I can hang in this, but my disease the whole time was doing push-ups, right? It was like figuring out, that maybe there was the possibility that this could be around.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just the fact that it could be around was enough. It was like that Coca-Cola. There was that possibility that, if I needed it, I knew a source now, which I hadn't known for that almost year that I was sober.
Yeah.
And now I was running with it. So that was really it. It was just a matter of time. If you put yourself in slippery places, you will slip. It's just, over time. I marvel at people who can be bartenders or that can sell wine. That's not something I could do sober today. There's people who can, and that's great. I know me, it just, if you're in it long enough, it's going to eventually bite you. So anyway, I came back in and I got sober and, got a great sponsor, did a great program. I was going to be the poster child for AA and my life got really good. I got married. I had a son. I got divorced. I didn't drink. Everything's great. Worked through all of that, got married again to this Norwegian gal who was in it for the green card. I was naive and, kind of thought that maybe we had something there, but really it was just the green card because eventually she divorced me when she got her green card. Literally within a month of getting her green card, she served me with papers. That was a real shocker. So here I am. I've got a business. It's very successful. I'm on the front page of the Houston Business Journal. We're doing some great stuff with video conferencing. I was predicting things like there's going to come a time when all of us are going to have a device that we'll hold in our hand and we'll have voice and face communications, that we'll do video conferencing as an everyday thing. And here we are. FaceTime, Zoom. Everybody's what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. It's all present now, but back then it was just coming up, and I was on the forefront of that.
What year was this in Houston?
This was in 1993.
Okay, so early
1993, early days, and the pre-internet. And
you're coming up on what, like 10 years of sobriety?
I'm 10 years sober then. Yeah, okay. I'm 10 years sober then. I'm divorced, newly divorced, and I'd put this list of females that I had met over the course of that 10 years, but being married, no access to that. I was always faithful in my marriages.
Yeah.
And so when I was finally free, now I had access to women. I had a great job. I was driving around in the car I loved. I was living where I wanted to live. I had all my stuff, the cool stereo, the big TV.
Built this life.
I had this life and no wife to have to share it with. And that was over. And the only thing that was missing was drugs and alcohol. And there I was at 10 years. I started getting away from the program. It was a lot of business meetings and, strategy and, success. And one day I walk in to meet with a couple guys, and the next thing you know, I'm looking over, they're drinking a Bud Light. And they said, "What do you have?" And I said, "I'll have one of those." I had a thought in my head. Recoil as if from a hot flame? No. I just got the beer, drank that, thought, that's not going to do it. Looked over, saw the 151, said, "I'll have that." That night, then, connected with somebody for some white powder. And then next thing you know, I'm off to the races and game over. Here's what I liken it to. If you have the disease I have, it's like walking through a door. And the minute you go through that doorway and it closes behind you, turn around, you will not find the doorknob. There's no doorway. You're in it. There's no way out. It's like you're just consumed in it. And that's what happened to me. I ended up, finding a gal that was as crazy as I was being, ended up marrying her, sober. But I didn't marry her while we were using. And I was out there for 5 years. I was out there for 5 years running and gunning, doing crazy stuff, losing everything, getting it back and losing it again and getting it back and losing it again. And I just could not hold on to anything. Insanity, just all the crazy things you can even imagine.
So that decision to pick up that first drink lasted for 5 years.
Yeah, 5 years.
And you blew through everything that you had built up over the 10 years of sobriety.
Yeah.
And then you end up, you met this girl. She was a drinker, drugger?
Oh, yeah. She introduced me to Freebase.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I should tell that story or not.
No, yeah, please.
Well, I mean, so, and this is where I was at. I was sitting in my place. This guy, Jim, comes by. I didn't particularly like him, but he was obnoxious, but he had good drugs. And so, isn't that it? And so, he says, "Hey, I need a wingman tonight. I've got to, get this gal, Sydney, off of, this gal, Michelle's back. I want to take her home. I need, a wingman to sort of move her on." So I go to what is basically a strip club. And so we're sitting there, 45 minutes goes by. I'm not having any fun. Okay. And there's a part of this story that's going to be the shocker at the end. Okay. So there I am at this club. I didn't want to be there, but I was there. Waited 45 minutes. She doesn't show. So I'm leaving. And as I'm walking out, she walks in. And I was smitten. I mean, in that instant, I fell in love with that woman. And I said, "Hey, I'm not having any fun here. Do you want to leave?" And without any hesitation, she says, "Absolutely." She turns right around. I mean, we've never talked. And in that moment, we just knew each other. And we leave, and she takes me back to her place, and she produces this giant penis pipe. It's a giant male member with a big scrotum and a giant bowl at the top. And she puts this big old rock on the top. She hits it with the burner, and I take a hit of that thing. And wow, like I'd never gone there, right? Like that was insane, right? So I do that with her till the wee hours of the morning. Now, here's the best part. The reason I wasn't going to leave was that when my son was 7 years old, I got custody of him. That little boy was sleeping in my place the whole time I was out doing that, all alone. I left him, stayed out all night, got back just in time to get him to school with a head full of cocaine. Like that's, and I realized in that moment, I was like, he can't be around all of this. And so what I did was the worst possible thing that I could ever do to a little man, my son, Robert, 9 years old he was then. I give him back to his mom. Like we were like the courtship of Eddie's father. We did everything together. We were inseparable. But when I finally went back out, all bets were off. Even my love for my son was not enough to keep me from doing that. And anyway, I give him back to his mom, and I go off on a 6-week tear. Just horrible.
Is there a lot of guilt and shame around that?
Oh, there's been, I mean, I've worked through a lot of it. It used to be I couldn't even tell that story without breaking out in tears. But, and my son and I have had those conversations, about that. And I know the impact of what that was like. It was devastating to him to be rejected by your father and sent back to your mother where you didn't want to be.
Yeah.
In that home where I had rescued him from that home and I was putting him back in a home he didn't want to be in.
Yeah.
That's the power of this disease.
Right. As a fellow recovering alcoholic and addict, I can relate to that story. I since my daughter has been born, I've been sober the entire time, but I could understand justifying that. Mm-hmm. I could justify because when you are drinking and drugging, all bets are off.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is the number. You will do whatever it takes to get the next high, to get the next drunk, whatever it is. That obsessive compulsive thinking, that's all you think about.
Yeah.
And all of the other things in your life around you, it doesn't matter. And we call them normies, people who are not alcoholics and addicts. People don't understand that.
Yeah.
It's a disease.
Yeah, it is. It's a disease. I mean, I definitely know this disease very well. I mean, so that was a relapse that I had with 10 years. And when I came back in 98, my life was in shambles.
Beaten down.
I was driving around in an old blue van that my buddy Bryce had let me borrow. It was a company van, and my car had been totaled. You know, I was messed up on coke and pulled out of a driveway and got completely totaled.
Were you still married to the girl who had the penis crack pipe?
No, I hadn't married her yet.
Oh, okay. So you were still with her the whole time?
No, we had separated, and I was now destitute on my own.
Good old toxic.
She left, went back to her mother's, and did all of this stuff. This was at the end of that, and it was 1998, and I remember thinking, my life is not where I want it to be. You know, sitting there on the floor of this guy's, spare bedroom, with a bottle of whiskey and a bag of whatever. And so I poured it all out. I flushed it. I poured it out. And the next morning I went and picked up a Desire chip over at the Post Oak Club in Houston. And that began the next 10 years of my sobriety. And so that was in 1998. So at that meeting, I met a guy who let me sleep on the floor of his apartment. And in that time, in that 1 month, no car, no job, no money, just getting sober again. I landed a great job in sales. I took a bus to go there, got the job, rode around with my manager for the first month because I didn't have a car. I would take the bus to go a sales job, outside sales. And my first commission check came in. It was so big, I bought a car within 1 month of getting clean. I made President's Club that year. I go back to the gal. I want her back in my life. Sydney comes back in. And in 2000, at another President's Club, I got married to her in Maui.
You're 2 years sober at this point.
2 years sober.
You get married.
Year and a half. Yeah, you're a little over. Yeah, year and a half sober. You know, I get married. I get married to the crazy gal that I had spent the prior 5 years.
Yeah. We do those type of things. Yeah.
But it was going to be different. It was going to be better.
This time it was going to be different.
This time it was going to be different.
Yeah, of course it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it always is.
Always is. And so anyway, we get married. It was really storybook, man. It was a beautiful wedding, you know, right there on the beach in Maui.
So that actually sounds beautiful.
It was fantastic. I mean, there's pictures there with the spray coming up behind us and we're kissing. It's just, wow. It was just beautiful.
Was she using at this time, or did she stop drinking?
She had curtailed a lot of, she was not using any drugs or anything like that, but she was drinking wine.
Okay.
You know, and I was like, that check. I'm not a big wine drinker.
Okay.
We can have that around. And so that's sort of how it went. There was a time in there where she got sober with me. She decided to put it all down. It was when she was having the baby. So the present we got out of Maui was that she got pregnant from our honeymoon in Kauai, which was right after the Maui wedding. We went to Kauai for a week. So she got sober, you know, when she was having the baby, and she stayed sober for a period of time, you know, but it was never long. You know, here's the thing. I worshiped her, you know, she just was like my whole world. Everything I did was for her and for Danielle, my daughter. And I was willing to tolerate, you know, her little nuances, you know, her little quirks. And, so anyway, fast forward, it's 4 years in. I'm actually 4.5 years sober now. And, all that's been great. I'm doing great. Work's great. Life's great. Everything's great. I come home one day and there's talking going on in the bathroom of my in the master bedroom, and I go in there, and there's this guy and her friend and her are there, and they're doing coke in my master bathroom. And I'm outraged. I mean, I am livid. I told this guy, I'll beat your ass, get the hell out of my house. How dare you come into my master bathroom and do this shit? It's ridiculous. So I kick them all out, and she's all apologetic. I'm so sorry, honey. I didn't know you were going to be home early, da-da-da-da. And I look at her and I go, you got any more of that? You got any more of that? Yeah.
What does she say?
She goes, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. You want to go back on that crazy little roundabout that we got on before? I was like, yeah, let's do that. Let's get crazy again. 6 months I was out. I didn't drink. I was You know how hard it is to snort cocaine and not have anything to bring you down?
No, it's
freaking horrible.
Yeah.
It was terrible. It was horrible. And so I came back in, got another desire chip, leg between my, tail between my legs. I'm all, that's it. I'm done. And, honestly, I don't know why I did that, except that there was this way of our being, her and I, with the influence of drugs that we couldn't get to, without it, crazy way of being. And
that was like a chemistry between you guys.
It was a chemistry.
It was a chemistry when drugs were involved. And it was like you were almost chasing that the 4.5 years that you guys, you were married and sober at that point. So you weren't able to connect on that level unless drugs were involved.
Right. Having a baby and all that stuff. We'd gotten to be just kind of a regular couple doing regular, couple things and all that stuff.
So she was a toxic partner that you kept around.
Oh, yes.
Was it like a premeditated relapse, you think, almost?
I think I kept her around because my addiction wanted her.
Yeah.
I was addicted to her. Like the addict was addicted to her who was the addict, and it was just a self-fulfilling prophecy there too, that was going to eventually happen.
Yeah.
And so fast forward, I get sober again. Everything's good. I'm back in recovery. I'm very, very involved in church now. I get very involved in church. I'd gotten involved in a recovery church in that 4.5 years. And so when I came back in, it was like I had that to go to, and I was very involved in the church. I got involved in Walk to Emmaus. My walk with Christ, really got, pretty amazing. I had some incredible spiritual experiences during that time. I worked with a lot of guys. I sponsored people. I took people through the Walk to Emmaus. I discipled people.
Wow, that's amazing.
I did a lot of stuff there. And so I'll give you an example. I was very honest inside of that about my addiction and my alcoholism. So much so that it was part of my story when I would give one of the talks, and 2 or 3 guys from those weekends, which was a Bible-based weekend. It was for faith-based, came into AA as a result of that, and so I feel like God put me in the right place, because there's people out there that are suffering that think that, they can just do it with church. Well, if you're a real alcoholic, church might do it for a while, but it's not going to do it long term. Unless you have a complete psychic change, which, can happen. I'm not saying it can't, but not for this alcoholic, that even with all of that demon still sort of lived in me. And, anyway, so I did that for a good long time, had a lot of different circles of friends, was really very, very happy with my life. Then I started another company. I got in a really bad situation with my partners. After 3 years, I got voted off the board of my own company and voted off as the CEO of my own company by my 2 partners that I brought in. That really stung. And
what was their reasoning?
Their reasoning was that they didn't feel like I was like taking them in the right direction. It's a long story. But the fact is I did everything right that I knew to do. I had all the right people. I had $2.5 million lined up, and they didn't like the way that the paperwork read.
Yeah, of course.
But that's the paperwork I needed to take to the VC to get the money. And they got greedy, and they thought they could do better. And they threw that deal away and kicked me out.
Yeah. Well, these are like, so this is life on life's terms. And like, I've had major events like that happen to me. And it like in sobriety, dealing with that, applying the tools that we're taught, the tools that we have around us and utilizing them. Did you end up staying sober through that?
I ended up staying sober. I was sober through that.
That's amazing.
I was sober through that, but I was building the most amazing resentment. I mean, I had the worst resentments going on. You can't even imagine.
I'll take you out. I'm going to take your family out.
I'm firebombing. I'm doing lots of stuff.
Who was on this email? Everyone done.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to get them back. I'm starting a new company and it's going to be bigger than this one. I'm going to get back at all of them.
Yeah.
And I will dedicate my life to it.
Yeah, that's basically it. I went on a tear for that.
I can relate.
And and there was that anger that was fueling everything at the time. And, you know, I had taken a lot of time away from my family, you know, and trying to build a business. And, you know, we were, and again, it was an interesting thing. We were doing virtual desktops in 2008. They didn't even know what the cloud was. And we were telling them your computer could sit in the cloud. I mean, it was revolutionary. Anyway, so fast forward, 2013, I wake up one morning and my wife's not in bed. She's gone. And Sydney.
Okay.
I can't find her anywhere, you know? And so, I call around, I can't find her. I look, I see her purse is still there. Her phone is still there, but the car's gone. She's taken the Jeep and she's left. Well, I call the police. I say I want to file a missing persons. They suspect I've done something with a body. You know, immediately they're looking at me as I'm the bad guy. Eventually, they find her, and she's in a hospital in Katy, Texas, which was about 45 minutes from where I was living. And they had found her in a ditch between Houston and Austin in a town called Sealy. And she had run off the road, and she was in a ditch in a bathrobe and a pair of slippers in 18-degree weather, stuck in a ditch, out of her mind. And I go to the hospital where she's at, and she's completely Looney Tunes. She's had a psychotic break. She's not present with us. I sign all the papers, commit her to a psychiatric unit. She starts getting a little better. She realizes that she had some weird stuff going on. Come to find out, she'd been doing pain pills. She'd been doing a lot of stuff, unbeknownst to me. She was definitely going down the road. And I was too busy, you know, I was too busy to notice all of that. You know, she was always home and everything was fine. Long story short, that began like that whole year of like in and out of different psychiatric units, doing, you know, DBT, doing all this stuff for her, taking care of her. You know, she was very fragile. You know, she was very depressed. It was a lot, you know, so there I was, you know, really putting a lot of focus. Meanwhile, my daughter is getting no attention whatsoever, really. And any attention she's getting is just not the best.
How old is she at this point?
At that point, she was 12 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are crucial years.
12 going on 13.
Yeah, of course.
12 going on 13. And at the end of that year, in October of that year, just before she turned 13, my mother-in-law died in a fire, right? And that took my wife, Sydney, over the edge. She just became very melancholy. You know, I couldn't figure out how to make it better. One day I was having lunch with her at the house. I went back to work, and I have this really bad feeling in my gut. I'm like, something's not right. Just something's not right. So I hightail it back to the house, and I come in, and her car's still there, keys, everything's all around, but she's not around, and I'm calling for her, and I can't find her. And I look in the closet in our master bedroom, and the light's on, in the closet. And I was like, well, why is the light in the closet on? And I open the door and I'm looking in there and I look down and I see 2 feet sticking out. And I walk in and she's hanging. She had taken a bathrobe, the rope, and she'd wrapped around her neck and she was hanging. Her face was all white and her lips were blue. She was gone. And I freak out. You ever try to lift a dead body?
Heavy.
It's heavy. And I'm getting her down. I get her down, lay her on the ground, and I start doing CPR. And she breathes. She takes a breath. Yeah, her eyes are completely closed. She's completely out, but she's breathing. I call the paramedics. They come in like within 5 minutes. They're there. We lived in a nice neighborhood, so they get there really quick. And they take her off to this trauma unit, this ICU. And within 5.5 hours, she comes to, and she has no recollection of what she's done. She has no idea that she'd hung herself. None. Completely.
Holy shit.
The last thing she remembers, she was having lunch with me, and then she's waking up in this hospital. Yeah. So back into treatment she goes, and I ship her off to treatment for the 6-week program. Nothing but the best, the Pavilion in North Carolina, I drive her there. And I'll never forget, I'm leaving there and I'm thinking, I just want her to get better. I just want her to get better. I get back to Houston. My daughter by this time has been taken by CPS and put in a friend's home. We had negotiated for her to go to one of her friends' homes while all this insanity was going on. Now, understand, in all of my conversation, you hear me talking about Sydney. It's always about Sydney. And my daughter is getting lost in the shuffle. I mean, she is getting completely lost. And I get back. I'm all alone now. My daughter's gone. And I'm cleaning up the closet. And I find a bottle of vodka. Half bottle of Finlandia vodka that my wife's hidden. Well, I don't just throw it out. I put it in the kitchen. I'm going to throw it out tomorrow. I go to bed. I can't sleep. All these thoughts going through my head. Like, what if I was 1 minute late, 30 seconds late? What was the timeline? What was the timeline before I would not have been able to resuscitate her? That's all going through my head. I can't sleep. I go out there, a little warm milk, and maybe some of that vodka. That was it. The next 6 weeks while she's getting treatment, I'm getting smashed. Yeah. That's it. I mean,
This was what, like 2015, 2014?
Yeah, 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, end of 2013, going into 2014. Yeah, so
that's heavy, what you're going through, and you're powerless over that because she's just, she was drinking, she had done the pain pills. And what is it like to have a partner who is actively using, and then you obviously find her in the closet with, the robe tie around her neck?
Mm-hmm.
What does it feel like to be powerless over someone as a partner? It's funny. You were the, addict and alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And then now you have a spouse who is
mm-hmm.
active in addiction.
Yeah.
What did that feel like?
It's an unsettling way of being. What I mean is that I wanted her to have recovery. But when she was in recovery, she was a miserable person. She was a miserable person when she was in recovery. She didn't take to it well. She still hasn't. She still drinks. I communicate with her here and there about my daughter, but she lives in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter lives in Houston as well. What it's like is that you feel like you're living a big bullshit lie, is what you feel like. Because I would go to meetings and then she would call me and say, get me a bottle of wine. Then I would have to go from that meeting. I would have to go to some far off place away from that meeting so I wouldn't run into anybody, buy her a bottle of wine and come home. So I was her enabler. I fit into that like a glove. I mean, it was like I went from, because that's how I was raised. I was raised to be an enabler. I enabled my mother. That's why she had me around. I made my mother's drinks. I gave my mother her pills. I called the ambulances when my mother would, take too many and need to go, to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I listened to my mother's, emotional, downloads every day about my cheating father and all of his drinking. And I mean, I from an early age, that's how I'd been conditioned. And so it just felt normal for me to like have this person that I had to like take care of, and not take care of in a good way, but take care of in like keep feeding her whatever it is that she needs. That's not necessarily going to be the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was very confusing. It was confusing. And I know it was confusing for my daughter because, she'd known me as a sober person her whole life. And now here I was being this kind of weird guy who was constantly taking care of her mother. And, that whole year was just all about Sydney.
So you went out for 6 weeks?
No, I went out for a year.
Oh, okay.
6 weeks was just a tear that I went on in 1993. In 2013, excuse me.
I'm sorry. I thought you had said the milk with the.
No, she was gone. Yeah, no, she was gone.
Oh, she was in an institution.
She was in an institution for 6 weeks.
Got it. Okay.
And while she was there, I was getting plastic. So when I went to pick her up, I greeted her with a 6-pack of Heineken, a carton of cigarettes, and a hotel room. And we got it on. And and it was like the insanity was right back. Got back to Houston and it was on. I mean, she went into her room with her bottle of vodka. My daughter was brought back into the house. Like we convinced them that she'd gone through treatment, and I was like, "Oh, I'm okay.
I'm still sober."
It was not. I was not sober. I was lying through my teeth. And so there was my daughter now in the bedroom between the two rooms that we inhabited. I was in a bathrobe literally for a year with a handle of Jack Daniels, drinking around the clock. My disease had progressed to that point. I couldn't hold down a job. Burned through a whole 401k, just toasted it. Everything I'd built in the last 10 years in a 401k was gone that year. And so in 2015, just the beginning of the year, having another day, where my daughter would get up in the morning, and how are we doing on time? Oh, my daughter would get up in the morning and she'd walk by me and I'd say, "Bye, honey." And then she would come home at 4:00 and I had not moved. And I would say, "Hi, honey." And she would go to her room. She wouldn't say a word. She'd just come in, go out, come in and go out. And that morning, in end of January 2015, there's a knock at the door and there's 6 cops. And I'm like, "What's this all about?" And they're like, "Oh, do you have a daughter named Danielle here?" And I said, "Yes, I do." "Is there a problem?" They said, "Yeah, there's a big problem. She's telling everybody that she wants to commit suicide and we're here to pick her up." I was like, "There's got to be a mistake." And they go on in the house, and they get her and they bring her out in handcuffs. And the guy looks at me with this disgust in his face I can't even begin to tell you. And he says, "And you need to get dressed and you need to come down to the psych unit with us." They kept me there for 14 hours checking her in. 14 hours away from a drink for a guy that hadn't stopped drinking for more than, an hour, 2 hours at the most I could make. 14 hours. Things were getting wiggy. I mean, I was going through full-blown detox, and I managed to make it back to the house. I guzzled some whiskey, called my son, and said, "I'm done." And my son, that's a whole nother story. Told you about the little 9-year-old that I gave back to his mother. Well, he went on a tear. And from the age of 9 till he was 13, he got into drugs, drinking, everything. He was a wild child.
Wow.
He did it all. I mean, he was dropping acid in school. I mean, he was the whole 9 yards, man.
Yeah.
And in 1999, when I had a year sober, we did an intervention on him. He was 13 years old, did an intervention on him, got him into a peer counseling group. He took to it like duck to a water. I remember dropping him off. It was his first week sober. I dropped him off at the International Convention for Young People, ICIPA, that was taking place in Houston.
Mm-hmm.
I drop him off there. I gave him a few bucks, said, just hang out. I trusted it completely. Just drop your 13-year-old son off at a hotel and know that it's going to be okay, because I knew that that place was full of sober people.
Mm.
When I picked him up on that Sunday, tears in his eyes, he's like, Dad, I had no idea it could be this good. Like he got it.
Is he sober to this day?
25 years sober.
Holy.
Wait, it gets better. 25 years sober. And he's a PhD in psychology. He does drug and alcohol treatment counseling.
Way.
Owns a treatment center in Texas
Wow.
called the Prairie.
I love
Texas.
that.
Beautiful 88 acres of gorgeous Texas land.
How old is he now? What, like 30?
Going on 40 this year.
Okay.
Maybe 40, yeah. 39, going on 40 this year.
Wow. So he is qualified. At 13, you're dropping acid. You're doing all this crazy shit. People are probably like, oh, well, he's just going through a phase. No, you're not doing that.
No, he was
qualified. And he was your son. He was qualified. So
yeah,
he was able to stay. I know someone who got sober at 15. So like it's the most amazing story in the world. So, okay. So now let's go back to 2015. You call him and he's sober.
He's sober. He's been sober this whole time. You know, he was sober from 99. This is 2015. So, you know, he's going on 16 years sober.
And he's like 30 years old at this point. 29, 30-ish.
Yeah. And he says to me, you know, Dad, what you need is trauma treatment. And that's what you need. He goes, you know, it's his expert opinion. So he gets me over to Milestones, which is in Nashville.
Mm.
And let me tell you what, Miles is the most amazing guy. You know, it's called, it'll come to me.
Yeah.
But Milestones was the program.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Dr. Phil sends all of his people to that facility.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the most amazing 30 days. Like they really started unpacking some things that I had not unpacked. Like I had to put a whole storyboard together of like what my life was like and then present that like, this is it. And people were just like, what? You know, like, wow, dude, you have definitely gone through some trauma. And so it was at the end of that, you know, about a week before that happened, I was doing this psychodrama and my daughter was being played by this girl and she was at the other end of the room and my alcoholism was being played by another person that was standing between me and her. And we had to do this psychodrama thing. And what I saw was the face of Sydney. I saw my wife's face on that alcoholism. And I said, I can't go back to that place. That's what I'm addicted to. And so I called her up and I said, I'm not coming back. And, you know, and at this time, my daughter had been shipped off to another friend's house and she'd been living there for a while. So
how old was your daughter when that happened,
14.
when the police came? She was 14. And so this is 2014. She was 14 roughly, or 2015-ish.
Yeah, she was 14. She was born in 2000, so it's easy for me to keep up with her age.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. So you get out of this trauma therapy place.
I get out of the trauma therapy. I go live with some friends, Joe and Carol, some of my best friends in the world. Rebuilding. Yeah, crazy stuff. You know, you talk about how things can transpire, you know, in recovery. Within my first 30 days of being back, I had no job, no money, right? Sydney had emptied the bank account. She took everything, right? When I said, I'm not coming home, she was like, she panicked and she took everything.
Of course.
Like, so I didn't have a card that worked. And so I remember borrowing $300 from this woman. Oh gosh, I want to get her name right. Oh my gosh. You know, this is what happens over time.
Yeah. Sorry. So you get $300.
Anyway, I get this $300 so I can survive, right? And in all of that, I get this call. And it's a guy that saw my resume that I had posted out there some time back. needed me for a particular contract, offered me $10,000 a month to come work for him to help him with his managed services business. And I'm just thinking, what are the chances of that, right? What are the chances of that? I literally didn't have a bank account. I literally took the money I had that I'd borrowed, put it into a bank account, and the next day I had $10,300 like that, right? And that was enough for me to get a place and get my daughter and get our life back together and, continue sobriety. And so, there was a good transition period there. Never went back to Sydney.
So you have been sober to this day since 2015.
Yeah, February 5th, 2015.
February 5th. So you celebrated 10 years 3 months ago.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
How is your daughter doing now?
We don't talk.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't talk. So you notice I wear this scarf all the time.
Yeah.
Right. That's she gave this to me.
You wear it every day.
I wear it every day. And this is the way that
she's with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's just some things that just take time. You can't rush it. What her mother and I did in her life, unforgivable. Truly unforgivable. But she gave me the benefit of the doubt for a time. But I'll tell you, in the time that I have been sober, I've done things a little different. Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah,
That's very okay. I'll take 2. We can get this on the edit.
No, you're good. Yeah.
And the time, that we were building back, she got to witness other ways that my addictive personality comes out. See, I believe that I have alcoholism that sits in the driver's seat, and it's little buddy addiction that sits in the passenger seat. And I can put alcoholism, I can take alcohol away, but all the other ways that my addict can come out, sex, shopping, food, all those things that are not, mind or mood altering, but they are. I mean, don't you get a high when you get a new pair of shoes or, there's a high. And my addict, doesn't know how to balance that. It's like, oh, I get 1, I can get 2, I can get 3, I can have more. It's this whole thing from more, right? And so, I went through, some different things. I've done some different things this time around than I had done the first time. And that's a whole nother conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But what I discovered in that, what I found for myself was that, that this identity was always trying to be, fixed. Like there was a part of me that was wanting to be healed, and there's a part of me that wants to be fixed. And so when I was in that part of me that wanted to be fixed, it was women, it was travel, it was money, it was shopping, it was going out and fine dining. All that stuff was like a fix. I traveled a lot, for work, always on a plane. And my daughter witnessed that. She saw 2 different fathers, the healing father and the fixing father. And she watched me go through probably 5 relationships in that time. And I think it just, it was like I was always giving something more to someone else than her. I was always, like, yeah, I'll take care of you. You're fine. You're okay. But this is where my interest is. This is where my attention is. This gal, this person who I've just met that I don't really even know garners more attention from me than you do.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm getting to experience that now. I get to sit with that. I get to be present to that, and that these things reveal themselves over time, that we come to an understanding of who we are in reflection. I can't fix the engine while it's turning, but when I take the time to sit and be still, which I do a lot now, I go to the beach a lot. I meditate a lot. I breathe a lot. I do all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And these things come up, and so for me, it's about forgiving myself, and it's about recognizing that she's dealing with this in her own way, and that there's nothing I can do to change that, but I can be present to her. And if and when she wants to talk or if she wants to connect again, I'm here. But every day I put this scarf on, and that's my proximity to her. That's how I stay connected.
How did you come to that realization where you were able to take that accountability from your end about the lack of attention towards your daughter and, new women coming into your life and them being the center of attention and it being diverted away from your daughter?
The realization that was the home I grew up in. My mother had a lot of boyfriends, and they always got preferential treatment. I was repeating the pattern I had learned. I was repeating that, and I was the same parent that my mother was to me.
And this was sober too, in some cases.
Yeah, sober. Well, because you see, like I said, when I put the alcohol down, all the really bad stuff, stops. Mm. And when I say alcohol, I'm talking about it in dry goods as well.
Yeah, of course.
But all these other addictive type personality quirks, like I said, the shopping or the fine dining or things that people would just take for granted, for me become, very monumental. It's there's something in that that's going to fix me. That's the fix me part. Mm. And so, I've been letting go of all of those fix me's, right? I had a relationship recently and recognized, when that ended in a very short period of time, that I wasn't supposed to be in a relationship. Like I saw that whole transition that happened with me, which was I completely get out of me and I just get into them. And it's just like, what can I do for you? How can I be here for you? How can I serve you? How can I take care of your needs? Forget my needs. Forget the fact that it's 9:00 at night and I'm walking with you because that's what you want to do. Mm. But I was in bed or whatever. That doesn't matter. It's what can I do for you? Because why? Because then something is going to be in it for me. I guess this quid pro quo, or I think is what you call it.
You're going to help validate me.
Yeah, you're going to validate me. You're going to give me some love that I can't seem to find anywhere else. And so I'll tell you, at the top of that whole thing is loving myself, coming to love myself, loving this man that I've become, this man that I am, this man that I was brought here to be, a child of God, a believer, a sober man, an honest man, a man you can trust, a man you can look to and rely on. Those are the things that I'm coming to love about myself, that I never gave myself any credit for. I just, my love was to give away. It was never to keep. Right.
Yeah.
And that was just, the nature of my way of being. And it was an identity. It was an identity that I was holding on to from early childhood.
Yeah.
And, but it was an identity that served me as well, where it was the chameleon, that I could fit in anywhere, that within any period of time, I could get anything and everything that I wanted. That's always been the case. But now it's like, that doesn't matter anymore. It's like all of that stuff is irrelevant. I'm driving around in this old hoopty, I rent a room. I don't have all the stuff. I don't have the fancy car. I don't have the high paying job. I work at a gym. I've never been happier. I've never been happier than I am now because I'm present to who I am. I'm present to why God has me here. I'm on a mission.
people go their entire lives with unresolved trauma. And the fact that you were able to get to the root, the cause, find love for yourself, not continue. I mean, I understand it was continued to an extent with your daughter. But you've recognized it, and you are, it's almost like a living amends right now with your daughter.
Yeah. I mean, there's not much I can do there per se, except let her know that I'm present to her, so I'll text her on, events like her birthday, Christmas. I mean, there's no response back.
Yeah.
But I still reach out.
Yeah.
But yeah, recognizing that, and then recognizing also that, it was always about me. I was just a selfish, self-centered person, just always wanted to take care of me by thinking that I was taking care of other people.
Yeah. What are some tools that you implement on a daily basis?
Prayer and meditation.
Keep that. Let me finish the quiet. No, I'm just kidding. You knew exactly where I was going with it. No, but so you have this love for yourself now. It's not outward love anymore. It's not outward love so that I could do enough so that you love me and I can validate myself through someone else. What are tools that you implement on a daily basis to keep your self-love front and center?
To die to self every day. Die to self. That means that when I'm born every morning, when I take that first breath of consciousness and I hit my knees, that is where the first surrender happens, in the first moments of the first hour of the day. I give myself up. I ask God to take away all of this part of me that wants things to be a certain way and not the way that he's planned them and intended them. And I ask that he would just let me be love and joy today, that I can be in the lives of others in a good way as love and joy in the world. No matter where I'm at, no matter who I'm talking to, love and joy.
Surrendering
every day, surrender. Yeah. And what I find is that, I don't have this gnawing need for anything. It used to be like I had this gnawing need, like it was always like something was missing. Something was missing. Well, what was missing was my connection with myself. That's what was missing. The gnawing need was not something outside of me. It was not something other than me. It was me. I'd never gotten to know me. I never got to spend time with me. I never enjoyed me. I never did the things for me that I enjoyed. I did the things for others that made them enjoy, and therefore I enjoyed through them. Their joy was my joy. Now I can manufacture that all by myself through God. And when I get present to him in my prayer and meditation, he speaks to me and he lets me know that he's got plans for me and they're good. And all I have to do is put one foot in front of the other, and make the effort. And he will present the most amazing people in my life. And he has, man. I'll tell you a story of this guy I met on a beach, Everett. I'm walking along. He's walking along, right? I'm sitting there in this beach and I see this guy walking by and I look at him. He looks at me. And in my heart, I said, that guy needs some water. He's thirsty. And he takes the headphone out and he looks over at me and this wind comes passing through. And he says, did you say something? Well, I hadn't. And I said, no, I didn't say anything. He goes, oh, it must have been the wind. He puts his headphone on and keeps walking. Well, I can't get it out of my heart. I mean, that's like, I got to give him water. I got to give him water. So I grab the spare bottle of water I have and I run this guy down on the beach. He's 60 yards away. I run him down and I present him with this bottle of water. And he says, oh my gosh. He goes, that's what I was praying for. And in that moment, our spirits connected. He's a 6'4" Jamaican Rasta with no dreadlocks and doesn't smoke ganja. And he and I have built up the most amazing relationship. In fact, we're even talking about having a podcast called Salt and Papa.
Two different walks of lives.
Two different walks of lives, two different ways of seeing the world, and yet we come to the same place. We always come to the same place. That place is to be in connection with the God in us. When the God in me connects with the God in you, we're connected in a way that that can't be manufactured, that cannot be produced, that cannot be bought. It's when the spirit connects.
Yeah.
And I've found that with many different spiritual brothers and sisters. You know, I have a lot of spiritual brothers and sisters now. And that's really what it is. And I can't get too focused on, you know, what about, you know, Robert's needs and what does Robert want? What does Robert need? My wants and needs are very, very, they're minimal, you know.
Yeah.
I need very little to operate today. I spend my time just trying to be as present as I possibly can.
Simple life.
Simple life, man. I've simplified it to the ridiculous now. And you know, which makes it kind of difficult because there's this, you know, part of you that says, well, gosh, I probably should be, you know, generating more income or, you know, there's all that. And yet at the same time, it's like, yeah, it's all ego. It's all ego. It's just like, you know, it's like, well, yeah, is the car you're in, is it running? Yeah, it is. Okay. Why do you need something bigger, better, faster? You don't. I don't. Right. I'm going to rely on what God is giving me, what God is producing in my life. And that's, you know, and as long as I'm doing the footwork, right? I mean, you know, I'm not just laying down in the bed and going, God, give it to me. You know, I'm going out there and, you know, trying to make a difference with my life and in the lives of others. And as a result, you know, God blesses me.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, Robert, I want to thank you. Yeah. Your story is going to help a lot of people. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience. And congratulations again on celebrating 10 years of sobriety in February.
Thanks. Appreciate it. It was great to be here.